Good evening, everyone. Ellen Sutter of ESP Presents and ESP Book Chats. Let me bring page turners your way. Today, our guest is Timothy Kabel. Hopefully, you guys are doing well out there. Let's see. Okay. I want to make sure I'm still online. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I'm here. Okay, there we go. There we go. I guess it's Timothy Kabel. Come on in the room, Timothy. Okay. How are you? I'm looking
Fine,
at
thank you. How are you?
great. I'm looking. I see it on Facebook. There we go. You just popped up. It's a delay, but you're there.
Well, I'm delayed too, so that's
No. Let's get to it. Last week was here. We was talking about the synopsis, and now we have the book in hand, guys. It's a nice plush story. Here it is. Oh well, it's gonna be blurry on mine because I have the blur background. Could you show it from your end, please?
sure.
I have the blur background. So just hold it up so folks can see it. And that is his book, The Sea Change of Dr. Abernathy. We're going to get into it. Tell the folks about you. But before you backdrop you as a writer, I've seen some things on Facebook. You was showing us that the Kindle and the scores, I guess I would say, for your Kindles. Could you talk about that excitement that you posted?
Yeah, since it came out, the book's been out about 2 weeks, and as you know, they rank it on Amazon by your what number you are out of all the possible books. So, I um the highest I've gotten with the hardcover is about 130,000, which I'm very pleased with
Yes.
because you know um I'm not in the New York Times. I'm not on The View. I'm with you, which I would rather be. Um,
Thank you so much.
and but as far as the Kindle, when it first came out, I thought it was a typo because I was at 10,000 out of all the books, and then I dropped down to about 5,000, and then the lowest or the highest that I got highest was 3,700. Which means out of all the books on Kindle, my book ranked number 3,700. So, for me not being a famous, I'm not Stephen King, so, and it's brand new to be that high was wonderful.
Yes. And to see that like that, especially you said this would be your second book,
It's the second published book.
second published book, and more in your head, and some is more work to come
I
out.
actually have 3 that are ready to go right now.
Awesome. I really enjoy your work, as I said. So give them a glimpse of yourself in the backdrop of this story. And we're going to go through these characters and stuff. But before you do that, it opens up in this book, The Sea Change of Dr. Abernathy. I want to make sure I say that character name right. Is it Tidrow?
Tidrow.
Tidrow. Okay, so it's some very interesting thing as we talk about him. Go ahead and give us a backdrop, and we'll talk about Tidrow. He being a top oncologist. We'll get into it, but just go ahead on very interesting story.
Let me give you a little tidbit. Um, I often take names for my characters. I grew up and I am a devoted Yankees fan. So many times I'll take names of players that I liked when I was a kid and so forth. And Dick Tidrow was a pitcher on the Yankees in the 70s who I liked a lot. So I used his name for the oncologist, Dr. Tidrow.
Love it, love it. Tell the folks a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to open this story up because
Sure.
it's a lot in this story.
Well, I've been writing for a few years. In addition to the 2 novels that are published, as I said, I have other ones. I just wrote a new one. I started it on September 7th and I finished it last night.
Ooh.
So that's just the first draft. I have to edit it and so forth, but it's about 93,000 words. So I don't sleep. But I did that, and also I write articles for Start Spreading the News, which is a New York Yankees fan website. And I do game recaps and articles, and I've done about 530 of those in the past few years.
Wow.
So, I worked for 30 years for the state of Connecticut Department of Children and Families, first as a social worker, then as a supervisor, working primarily with the adolescent population. And then I also worked while at DCF. I worked on the after hours on call. It's been called the care line. It's been called the hotline. You call it what you want. But basically, when the offices were closed at night and on weekends and holidays, I would be on along with other people. And if an emergency or something came up, if a young person ran away from a foster home, I'd be out with a flashlight looking for him in the middle of the night. So,
Wow.
So I did that for years. Before that, I was going to be a history teacher on the high school level, but at that time, there were no jobs. When I went to a couple of job fairs, and the principal of one of someone from the Board of Ed from one of the towns said the last time they hired a history teacher was 28 years before that, and they
Wow.
weren't planning on hiring any new ones. So the only state that had an opening at that time was Alaska, and I didn't really feel like moving to Alaska. So I switched gears and did other things.
Wow. And I'm glad you landed in this writing, industry. I really enjoy your work. So, with that being said, I want to just go into the story now. The story opens up with Dr. Tidrow,
Yep.
Dr. Tidrow, who's a top oncologist. He's been that for 5 years. He's 45 years old, divorced, um, and also their mirrors, him and Dr. Abernathy, they sort of mirror each other in a way because it talks about their family, it talks about their children, estranged children, and the siblings and colleagues, and virtually everyone he has problems with. And then I see the flip screen with him sitting down, Dr. Abernathy, hearing his diagnosis from
Right.
him, not believing him. And what was so funny to me, you always write something very hilarious in that. What got me was how Dr. Abernathy told Dr. Tidrow, I'm a doctor too.
Right.
It was hilarious because Dr. Tidrow had to tell him, no, you're not medical doctor, you're a professor. And he was just really trying to, they both getting on edge like that, which made me crack up because the real truth is he does not, Dr. Abernathy does not want to accept the diagnosis.
Right. And
It
and as he says to Dr. Tidrow, he said it's a lot different giving the diagnosis from your side of the table than it is getting it at my side of the table. And I bet if someone told you this, you'd want to make darn sure that they were accurate too.
exactly. And the thing is, Dr. Abernathy knows that Dr. Tidrow is a specialist.
Right.
So as a writer, and me looking on as a reader, and you showing these, Tidrow is an old soul, being that he said he's 45, and then you got um, Dr. Abernathy, he's what, 72, 70 something.
72.
And then he's hearing this. To me, that conversation was like it was a beautiful conversation. You would think they were two old farts, as they say. And
Right.
then he's hearing and he's trying to challenge Dr. Abernathy, trying to challenge Dr. Tidrow, not just on his professionalism, but also as how you're going to give me this. and he wanted something different. He wanted to hear something totally different. So give us a backdrop of those two characters, and why was it so important that you show the similarity between the two in my eyes as a reader reading on?
Well, I wanted to set at the, I mean, the tone of the book, I wanted to be sort of the tone of Dr. Abernathy. In other words, he's a no nonsense type of person. He rolls up his sleeves and he digs right in. So that's why on page 1 you find out his diagnosis. And the thing of it is, he does not tolerate fools, and he doesn't like people who are condescending or pretentious. And he thinks that his initial impression of Dr. Tidrow is sort of that he's basically a pompous ass who's, talking down to him. And that's why he says, look, I'm a doctor too. And Tidrow says, well, it's not the same. And he goes, well, it's a title I earned just like you earned yours. So he's letting him know right at the outset how things are going to be. And then Dr. Tidrow sort of takes a step back because he's never dealt with anybody like this.
Exactly. That's ooh.
He deals with people who just are sort of reverent to him, and whatever he says goes, and they don't question anything. But Dr. Abernathy questions everything.
Mm-hmm. And even in seeing that, I'm gonna pause, and I'm gonna remember that, but pause, resetting. And hello, Barbara. Thank you for being here. How are you? I have a guest here, and I want to call you Dr. Abernathy so bad, but I know you're not. Y'all might have some similarities, but this is Timothy Kabel, and he is the author. He would have to show you the book because I have mine on Blair. He is the author of The Sea Change of Dr. Abernathy, a wonderful book. This is his second book, and I really enjoyed that book. So I like the way you had Dr. Abernathy to challenge him, because that was an important part to me, because we don't challenge our doctors. If they give us a diagnosis, we just go with it. We don't challenge it. We don't try to do a second opinion. And
True.
with Dr. Tidrow, he was letting him know that I'm sure that your other doctors had at least told you something. And that to me was like a big challenge. Let's talk about that part when he was telling him, this is very late in life. You don't usually see this. And it's the type of cancer that he has.
Right. Well, with stomach cancer, it's very hard to detect. And there are a lot of times when people get it and they don't know because, it's hard to detect, and you often don't find it until it's too late. And that's what's happened with Dr. Abernathy. He'd gone to the doctor because he'd had some issues with stomach pain and reflux and things like that. And he thought it was just getting old. And, he didn't know. And now he finds out what it is. And, he wants to be sure. That's why one of the first things he says in the book is, are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Because as you said, we don't challenge our doctors. And, and I've seen that firsthand. I was in the hospital about 6 years ago, and a couple of doctors came over to me all alarmed and upset. And they said, your blood work is really alarming, and there's a problem, and we're going to have to do all these things. And I said, wait a minute, what blood work? And they said, the blood work we took this morning. I said, you took it from the guy in the other bed, not me. And if I hadn't questioned that, Lord, done to me.
Too many times that does happen.
Oh, yeah.
That's my goodness.
When you go to get your right arm operated on, the doctor writes on it so they don't operate on your left arm.
Wow. That just brought back, as you said, and you got to pay attention to your own advocate for your own health care. And
right.
That's one thing Dr. Abernathy, he is very adamant about that. Now we go a little bit further and we see that not only is Dr. Abernathy, he has a diagnosis, he's also lonely and want a companion.
Correct.
And so we see him, he meets up with Beatrice. And I
Yes.
love that conversation that she has with him. But I wanted to ask you before we go in there with him getting the cat, Lady Firm. I like that. And then also you have Claus uh,
Clausewitz.
Clausewitz. I'm like, wow, that sounds like an interesting cat. So the conversation with them uh, early on, she's letting him know, he's trying to get out of it because he has a diagnosis and he knows he don't want to. He may pass soon. But then I like when she gives him true encouragement. Why
Right.
was it so important for you to show how not only Beatrice couldn't do a refund, but then she encourages him to think a little bit further? Why was that important to show that?
Well, because it shows not just about Beatrice, but it shows how Dr. Abernathy is. He looks into everything. And, as you said, his plan was, and he researched what kind of cat he wanted and the breeder and found the top breeder and everything else. And he's seen the cat a couple of times in person and online. And he's picking up this little orange Maine Coon kitten. And he's decided, because he was a history professor for all those years, over 35 years, to name him Clausewitz after Karl von Clausewitz, who was a historian. He was a general. He was a military philosopher. And his famous book was On War. And it's been applied many, many times throughout history. And Dr. Abernathy was a real, I don't want to say fan of his, but he followed his teachings.
Mm-hmm.
And so he decides to name the kitten Clausewitz, which is an unusual name for a cat. But he decides, once he gets home and he finds out his diagnosis, the first thing that Dr. Abernathy does, and this is his character, he goes to the store and he gets more legal pads, because he writes everything down on the legal pad. What he's going to do, he puts it in order, and he follows this. And so, and he makes a list of the phone calls he's going to make that night. And he calls the breeder because he thinks, you know what, if I'm dying, maybe I shouldn't get this cat, because if the cat lives to be 14, 20 years and I'm gone, what's going to happen to the cat? So that's why he calls her up, and he's having second thoughts. And then she sort of makes him look at it a different way, and says, there have been all sorts of studies that show that when you're people who are ill and have health issues, that cats can be, very helpful, and dogs too, very helpful for you and can help you in your recuperate. Excuse me. And he's, and then she's going on about that. And then she says, and you don't know how long you're going to be there. And if worse comes to worse, I can rehome him if I have to. But let's not get that far down the road. And then she hits him with the knockout punch and says, I don't give refunds. And it's a very strict policy. And you know that, and I'm not going to do it. So then he's like, and he says to himself, well, the last thing I want to do is get in a fight with a cat breeder.
Yes.
So he's like, all right, I'll see you on Saturday.
See, and that was good. That was really good. And to me, that point as a reader, she was getting him to look beyond his care of, his thought process. She wanted him to live while he's living instead of dying living.
Exactly.
And so with saying that, it makes him ruffles up. He doesn't like to be ruffled.
No.
And then he takes on the charge because he doesn't like to fail.
No. And he's like, all right, I'm not going to fight with her. I'll make it work.
And that's what he did. But in seeing that, once he's in the room with Lady Fern, Let's talk about Lady Fern. It seems like to me, as a reader, I like the way you set that up because the cat he wanted was in the other room, and now he's in room with Lady Fern.
Right.
Was that a setup?
No,
Because she felt that he needed to have someone that is just like him.
not really. No, she considered it. Basically, what happens is he arrives at Beatrice's house on the Saturday. He's no longer annoyed with her. He actually likes her. Um, and when he shows up, he's got his cat carrier and he's got everything. And Clausewitz, he's a kitten, so he's in the other room with the other kittens fooling around. And so while he's just talking with Beatrice, all of a sudden this fully grown, stunningly beautiful female Maine Coon cat enters the room, and it sort of catches his attention. And then she starts entwining herself around his legs and purring, and she won't go away. And so he starts talking to Beatrice about her, and her name is Lady Fern, but they just call her Fern. And she had been like, a champion in cat
Mm-hmm.
and so forth, and had done breeding and things like that. And he so he's looking at her, and then Beatrice again says, if anything ever happens, if your diagnosis is accurate and you get in a situation where you can't care for Clausewitz anymore, I will rehome him. I'm not going to abandon him or you. And so she's like, I'll be in touch with you a lot. So he's heartened by that. And then she said, because that's what I'm doing with Fern. I'm rehoming her. And then he says, well, what's the matter with her owner? And she says, well, nothing. It's Fern that has the issue. And you find out that Fern has the cat version of breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she's had surgery, and she's going to require chemotherapy and other treatments that are going to be expensive. And they're also going to be, it's if you're the owner of that cat, you have to be committed to the care of the cat because it's going to be quite extensive.
Mm-hmm.
And the owners who had her didn't want to do that. They said, we're not going to do that. So she took the cat back, and basically, if she can't find a home, she would probably keep her, but eventually she would have to be put down. And
Mm-hmm.
once that Lowell finds that out, and the cat won't leave him alone, and he's petting her constantly, and he hasn't even seen Clausewitz yet.
Right.
I mean, he has in the past, but on this visit, he hasn't. The cat that he came for, he hasn't even encountered him that day. So it turns out, and he's sitting there, and he's coming to the realization, without giving too much away, he's coming to the realization that he was reluctant to get the one cat, and now he's going to wind up leaving with two.
Exactly. I'm going to reset again. Resetting. And thank you guys for being here. Hello, Wendy. Good to see you there. Our guest here is Timothy Kabel. Show that book up there. I'm on the blur, so it's not going to show up. It is a very interesting story. I really, really like that. And thank you guys for coming and do share, swipe, and share. And those who look in replay time, thank you for watching. Another thing I thought about too as we were talking and while I was reading the book is you said that Lady Fern, they call her Fern, that she was a champion cat. In my mind, now I'm thinking, now that we're talking, was that a way of fur friend wooing and also Dr. Abernathy thinking in the mode of humanity?
Yeah, I mean, Beatrice she's not a devious person or anything like that, but she knew that Fern would come out, and she didn't know what would happen. But she was even surprised how much Fern bonded to Dr. Abernathy. And that's what happens for people who own, particularly cats. Dogs are a little different. But cats will bond to a person. It's often the cat picks you, you don't pick the cat.
Mm-hmm.
And, and Fern, you'll see as you get into the book, Fern is very attached to Dr. Abernathy.
Wow.
So now he's there, and so then he starts asking these questions, and he's asking, the whole conversation is about Fern and cancer treatment for cats. And he's thinking, this is more than I ever thought I'd know about
Yes.
cats and cancer. And he looks at it this way. He's 72 years old. He's taught at Dartmouth for all those years. He's retired. He has his pension. He was in the Army, so he has his military pension. His house is paid off and everything else. He has money.
Mm-hmm.
So cost is not an issue for him. And he was thinking, well, if it came down to it, I would have just paid for the cat, probably, if that's what the issue was. But now Fern won't let him go. So, and then eventually Beatrice goes to and he asks Beatrice at one point, did you plan this? And she says, no, I knew you two would be in the same room, but I had no idea this would happen. I think it's a good thing, because Beatrice loves her cats, and you'll see later, and you get deeper into the book, Beatrice is a very complicated person, and she's very empathetic, and she has a lot of insight into things. I'll leave it at that. But
yeah, I wanted to also, as Dr. Abernathy was thinking, he mentioned his wife, Lucille.
Yeah.
And I liked the way it was very hilarious. You just had me laughing, and he was thinking about, well, if he dies, he don't even want to be buried next to Lucille.
Correct. He has established
their relationship in life or death at all.
Right. You'll find out in the subsequent chapters more details about his relationship with Lucille. He didn't hate her. And at this point, she's been gone, and he doesn't have any hard feelings or anything toward her. But you'll see when you get deeper into it that it was a very complex relationship, and that there are people in his inner circle who have misperceptions and perceptions about that marriage and about him. And you'll see as you get deeper in. But Lucy, he doesn't want to be buried next to Lucille.
He does not. I like when you mentioned Kirsten a little bit back, but what I didn't know until I started reading is how the guy Lester Stedman,
known as Dewlap.
Yes, that was too funny. So just seeing her and having empathy for him and trying to help him with his lesson, like you said, he had a silver spoon, she didn't. Right. But her demise was just pretty crazy. She just wanted to help him. So mentioning her and Dr. Abernathy, knowing her and being his student, how did that spiral out in his mind?
Well, as you go deeper in, you'll see more and more layers with that. But Kirsten Meade was one of Dr. Abernathy's shining stars. Mm-hmm. She was, in his mind, the best student he ever had, and the smartest, and one of the best writers. And he had he envisioned her eventually becoming a professor, or following in his path, but he knew she would go far. And then she crossed paths with Lester Stedman. And as the book says, Lester wanted to find a way he wanted a degree. He didn't necessarily want an education, and he wound up getting neither one. And Lester was known as Dewlap by the professors and students because he has such a large fleshy prominence from his chin and neck, and it caused all these Ivy League professors to argue at length. Some of them think that the only thing he has is a neck, and the others think he doesn't have any neck at all, that it's just his chin connected to his chest. And that's where Lowell falls. And he's considered to be a complete and utter buffoon by everybody except himself and his parents.
Wow.
And he comes with money.
He has that money, and like you say, she didn't have that. So you have a lot of characters in here that I want to hit on, and you talk about, we get a little further in the story where Dr. Abernathy is reaching out to his children.
Right.
And so we see his daughter, Felicity. It seems like with her, I don't know how the relationship was, but we'll see further on. But it seemed like she might be a little bit like him in slight way of personality or something, the way that phone call went. But at the same time, she knows her dad. She knows that it's a lot more when he makes that phone call and talks to her. But what got me was the husband, Felicity's husband.
Chad?
Yeah. Now, I wanted to slap him at one point because she said, I can come over, but Chad is not one to be keeping the kids. What is he there for? Yeah. He's not big on that. What is he there for? And yeah. I like what Abernathy said, Dr. Abernathy said, he just like a president gets his terms, he thinks his term is over.
Yeah, he views him as her incumbent husband, and he hopes that he's voted out of office. And you'll see a lot more with Chad, but the relationship between Dr. Abernathy and Felicity, and this is one-sided. It's from her to him. It's frosty. And he says that he'll stay in there. Then he notices that whenever she comes to see him, it's sort of out of duty rather than desiring to actually see him. Thinks, I have to go see Dad. It's not that I want to go see Dad. And she'll sigh, when she's there. There's not, and at one point it wasn't that way. And now there are reasons that you'll see why she has that way of dealing with him. And
because they say it was close. Let's get to Hank, his son, Hank, who has a girlfriend, Solange.
Yes.
I thought about Beyonce's sister right away.
Well,
so what? She just seemed to be busy. He's making excuses for her. I got to see her. I got my eye on her. I got to see her a little bit further because he says that she can come over if she wants to, but not at this time. And he's making excuses like, oh, she's always busy. She got her college, got her business and all that stuff.
Well, as Lowell says, she's busy. As Lowell says, she's busy doing nothing.
Right.
So he's like, he said she's extremely busy for someone who doesn't have either children or a job.
Right.
And, she has all these volunteer things and projects and things like that. And you'll find out a lot more about Solange. And even, the name Solange, and when you'll see her, the way she speaks with a French accent that no one else in her family has. And
I can't wait. I knew I had my eye on her for some reason. Now you go with his brother Prescott and his brother's husband Bill. So why was it, who's that, Beatrice or someone says, oh, pretty progressive, because they didn't do that back then. So the glimpse of that, what did you want to show the dynamics of what we are in today, or?
Well, it shows a lot. I mean, it shows about Prescott and Bill, but it also speaks to Lowell, that Lowell's accepting of his brother. And he
Mhm.
even says, maybe I should get a husband
Yeah, he
because
did.
he's been
That
married
cracked
long
me up.
time. And Beatrice says, I can't imagine you with a husband. So,
Exactly.
and Prescott, I think of all the family members, he's close. Now, there is no frostiness with Hank. Hank loves his father. Hank is a very affable, likable, easygoing
I
guy.
see that.
And he
Mhm.
loves his dad, and he has no problem with anything. And but I think of all the family members, you're going to see the one he's closest to is Prescott.
I see
Prescott
that.
Prescott's his younger brother, and he always looked up to Lowell. But he's also kind of a smart aleck, Prescott. And he doesn't, he's just like Lowell. He doesn't have any problem voicing his opinion on things. And so he talks to Prescott, and Prescott is married to Bill, and Prescott is an antique dealer, and Bill's his partner in the business, but Bill's also a photographer. So when Lowell calls him, he doesn't tell anybody over the phone what the diagnosis is.
Right.
He won't do that, and he sets an appointment with his kids to come that following Sunday for dinner or lunch or whatever, the meal.
Mm-hmm.
And he asks them not to bring Felicity's the only one with kids, not to bring her kids, and not to bring their significant or insignificant others. In the case of Chad, says, just you. And then he asks Prescott to come over on Saturday after he gets the kitten, because, and he's like, well, can Bill come? And he's like, of course Bill can come. I like Bill. I don't like any.
I was like,
So
I thought nobody could come. I thought no one would come, but you let Bill come.
he
And I
let
thought,
Bill come on Saturday because he sees Solange and Chad as distractions.
mm-hmm.
And they're not in his inner circle, and he doesn't want to confide his diagnosis to them.
Yeah.
He has no problem doing it with Bill because Bill's been married to his brother for years, and they've been a couple for years.
Mm-hmm.
And he likes Bill. Bill's just this little pudgy guy, and as the book says, some men are built for speed, some men are built for power. Bill was built for comfort.
Yes, I see
Like,
that.
he looks like a group of preschoolers molded him out of clay.
Wow. But
So
you get to see all these things in this story. And I like how Prescott asked him, his brother, when he called him and he said, what's going on? I've been waiting 4 hours for this diagnosis.
right.
And he's bypassing that. I've been waiting,
And you're gonna make me wait until Saturday? He's like, yes, you're gonna wait until
Yeah.
Saturday. I'm not gonna get into it now.
But he said Bill could come and take pictures.
And he wants Bill to take pictures of the cat.
Now I'm thinking, okay, is he gonna take pictures? This drama unfolds about him telling his diagnosis, but they're coming on different days. So
Right, yeah.
that's what made it different.
They're coming on. Bill and Prescott are coming Saturday for dinner. And you'll see Lowell is among all of the other things he does, he's a very good cook.
Mm-hmm.
He prepares them like he does everything else. He prepares the meals very thoroughly. And, while he's picking up Clausewitz, and which he didn't know, Fern, he's got a pot roast stewing in the slow cooker so that when he comes home, it'll be ready for the meal. And, he's got everything. He has everything prepared and ready. And normally Lowell would often have either a beer or a glass of wine with his meal, but now with the medications he's on and his stomach situation, he can't.
Mm-hmm.
So he's that's fine. He doesn't, he's not going to get upset about that. But so he's got Bill and Prescott coming over, and they come on Saturday after he gets home with his new companions.
He didn't even let the family even bond with the cats. He rather show them to Bill and
Well, no,
Prescott.
they're coming on Sunday to see the to see him, and they'll see the cats, and you'll see what happens, because that's in the next chapters when
Yeah, yeah, I can't wait to see that. But as this story go on, and like I said, you got the people, the family coming in, and he has this diagnosis. But as we see the beautiful conversations, like I said before, with Dr. Tidrow, and then you see Abernathy, you see a guy who, oh, I want to go back. Want to go back to when he was talking to Beatrice, and when he had the diagnosis, and he said he has 5 years that give him a chance to finish the book.
right,
Let's talk about that. Him grasping time in a sense of he wants his goal to at least finish, those books.
right. Well, Dr. Abernathy, in addition to being a tremendous history professor, he was, whenever something major happened in the country that was historical or political, he would be one of the experts they would have on the news shows. Because like now, when something happens, they interview a professor about, well, constitutional history or whatever. He was always one of the ones that was on the networks, because he was considered to be one of the best historians in the country. And he's written books already. He wrote one where he took he called it Waging War, and he took Clausewitz teaching, and the main thing that Clausewitz said was, war is an extension of politics by other means.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is, whatever your country's political goal is, that's what the military action is going to be. So if you're like in Vietnam, we weren't fighting to like overthrow communism, we were fighting to contain it. So that's why it was pursued in a different way. Same with Korea. And so what Dr. Abernathy did in that book was he applied Clausewitz to different military wars and battles in American history, and he won the Pulitzer Prize for that. And then he wrote a biography of George Custer, and he wrote one about all the presidents who were generals that he called commanders in chief. And then he wrote another one about General MacArthur's strategy in the Pacific War, called Withering on the Vine, because what MacArthur did was, rather than going in and knowing that when he would fight the Japanese soldiers, it would be carnage, they wouldn't give up, they didn't surrender. So rather than doing that, he would cut the islands off, so just that they would wither on the vine and starve out, and they wouldn't have a big bloodbath. So he's written those, but now his goal was, he had several other books in his mind that he wanted to write when he retired, and he was going to sit at home with Clausewitz and write these books. So now everything's all going haywire with this diagnosis. But the first book that he's already been working on is called At the Forefront, and it's about essays. It's not like a biography. It's 33 or 34 essays about different people in different areas. It could be politics, it could be the military, and it's about leadership. And so I think it's one of the interesting things about this book. You see a book within the book, and you see Lowell Abernathy writing this book on leadership, and you see the different people he selects and the research he does and how he writes it and what his opinions are of these people. And he even says that it's not about whether they're good people or not. And it's not about, whether they're a good leader, a good person or a moral person. you can be a tremendous leader, but you can be evil at the same time. And
That's true.
he writes about Hitler and Stalin and a few other people. Even Reverend Jim Jones is
Ooh,
one of the, because he's like, he had to have some leadership ability to have all those people follow him. And
wow.
and so that's what he writes about. So you see, that's the book within the book. And so what he does that first night, he takes his legal pad and he writes at the forefront, and he starts mapping out what he's done already, what he needs to do. And his plan is, no matter what, before he, as he says, before he croaks, he's going to finish that book. Because
Wow.
he's not going to mince words or try to say things delicately. He'll say, I'm going to croak, and he'll say, I'm going to the bone orchard, or, he has colorful language, and he's not going to fool around.
Wow. Two things I wanted to ask you. Let's see. We still got a little bit of time. We're doing good. I wanted to ask you, I want to talk about him writing the books and you as a writer. But first, I want to ask you about their father,
Charles.
Charles the father. And I see that, he see his son. I guess he wanted him to be like, regular and just have a wife or whatever. But then I see him, it mentions mom was okay with his lifestyle. And then it mentioned that his father, he wasn't okay with it, but he began to cope with it.
Right.
So you also show in there that he wrote a book on fatherhood. Why was it important to show that? Me as a reader, I'm saying this, do you think that he may have thought he failed as a father in some way?
No, I think his father was, in a lot of ways, Lowell is like the father, in that the father was a teacher at a prestigious New England boarding school for years. And then he wrote poetry, and he wrote short stories. And as you'll find out later, they were all sort of like dark short, kind of like Edgar Allan
Mm.
Poe stories. But um, they he at first he struggled a lot. Charles struggled with with the fact that Prescott was gay, and it was a problem for him. But eventually, about 5 years before he died, he reconciled with Prescott and Bill, and he accepted them. And in fact, the desk that Lowell now has had once belonged to President Calvin Coolidge. And because Prescott and Bill were antique dealers, they came across it and they gave it to Charles as a gift. And in fact, when he was writing a poem, about fatherhood on the desk when he died.
Mm.
He's come to he has accepted, and there was no animosity or anything like that. There was no rift at the end. He died. There had been before, but by the time the father died, everything was fine with his sons, with both.
Do we as a reader get to see a little bit of that writing that he wrote his father wrote, or
No,
not really? We just have to just kind of fill in the
it's
blanks.
referenced. What
Uh-huh.
you will see is you'll see Lowell's writing as he writes this book, and then later on, there's a character who's a poet. So you'll see poems that were written by me that were written by that character, the poet.
Wow. That
So,
brings me to my next question for you. I noticed you mentioned quite a few books. Are these books, as you as a writer, are these books some you've read or some you've come across? And how do you, as a writer, when you're writing a book within the book, how do you embody these different characters to be true to the story?
well, all the titles and all the books that Lowell Abernathy wrote, I made up. I mean, they're not real books. But they're books that I made up that he would make up, or not make up, but he would write. Because, you know, as far as the Clausewitz thing, I had a professor, and there's a little bit of this professor in Dr. Abernathy. Best professor I ever had, Dr. Albert Abbott at Fairfield University. He's gone now, but he was an amazing professor, and he used Clausewitz in the class on military history that I took. And our final exam was to take the statement of Clausewitz, war is an extension of politics by other means, and apply it to 5 battles in American history. Now, me being me, I loved it so much, I used 10 battles. And I filled up, you know, those little blue essay pads and for the final exams in college. I think I filled up like 6 or 7 of them. And I loved that class. So I knew this was a book that Lowell would write. And also, you'll see the different people that, you know, the books that he wrote, they reflect his way of thinking and how he is. And his biggest desire after the one that he's writing now is he always wanted to write a biography of Theodore Roosevelt. That was what he wanted to, that was his big plan. But you'll see, he comes to the realization he's not going to be able to do that. Because,
go ahead.
Because that one would just take too long. It takes time that he doesn't have.
Wow. So when you give your character description, and I don't have the proper name for it, let's go with Lyle, Dr. Abernathy. How do you study him? What, you know, because you know what he likes. How do you do the study on those characters who you want to bring out in your story?
I make when I make up a character, when I actually, they sort of come into my head. It's like they're in there and they just come out. And Lowell has a little bit of me, and he has a little bit of my professor, Dr. Abbott, and he has a little bit of one of my brothers, not the one who was in the other book.
Okay.
Brother.
All right.
Because he can be a little sarcastic and, you know, right to the point, which I am too. So there's a little bit of him in there. But Lowell, you'll see that Lowell is a guy who thinks everything through. He plans, but he can also adapt. You know, I mean, his mind is such that he has his plans, but he also can improvise and change his plans, which is what he has to do when he's given this diagnosis of cancer. You know, he's not the type of person who's going to sit around and cry and feel sorry for himself. He's just not going to, that's not even a possibility. He's already, when he's driving home from meeting with Dr. Tidrow, he's already planning. Okay, you know, because he had been thinking about selling the house and moving. Well, now he's not going to worry about that, because why would he move when he's only got a few years left?
Right.
He's going to stay where he is. And you'll see other things and how he's things that he's planned and maybe over planned in his life as you get deeper into the book, and just how he does things, and also his approach to situations and people. And, you know, you'll see, without giving too much away, but you'll see that things he might not have addressed, because he doesn't, he says at one point, I now have total freedom because I'm dying. So I can say what I want to say and no one's going to stop me. You know, he basically comes to the realization, my kids aren't going to desert me. I can say whatever I want to say, but they're not going to leave me because I'm dying. So but I'm not going to hold anything back anymore.
Woo! And we'll see that further down, like
Right.
after the 10th chapter, really way down there.
Yeah, that comes pretty quickly.
Mm.
But you saw now. So in the second chapter, after he gets the cats, then Bill and Prescott come over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he shares his diagnosis with them. And also the cats, and they're confused when they come in and see. They're like, wait a minute. I thought it was a kitten and I thought it was orange. This is what happened. And they're perplexed. And so he explains the whole thing. And then they start thinking that he was somehow hoodwinked by the cat breeder, and they want to take action. And Bill says, well, I can get my brother, he's an attorney. And Lowell says, your brother's a tax attorney. We don't need that here.
Wow.
Just relax.
We're gonna see a lot more hilarious things in this story. And we're coming up on that time, but this has been just great. Again, with this story, sure, again, for those who are looking out there, our author here, I wish I could show my book, but I can't with this blue thing. Timothy Kabel, The Sea Change of Dr. Abernathy. Hilarious, thought-provoking, and it's so many things going on. And you're welcome. You always deal with family and these things I really like. And where we see more and more character building, we'll see more different characters as we go forward. And so I'm looking forward to that. And we'll be back next Tuesday. We actually got two more. So that first time you guys seen us, that was the Scout Out shout out. And today is our full show. What would you want them to take away as we've seen from the first few chapters? And we're not in that yet.
Well, I think the point that I want people to get and realize, this isn't a downer of a story. Everybody at some point in their life has to deal with something unfortunate. It happens to everybody, and everybody handles it differently. And what you'll see, the point of this book is how this man, Lowell Abernathy, takes what is given to him and what he does with his life, and not just for himself, but for the people in his orbit. And also he feels that he still, his book that he's so desperate to write, he feels that he has something to say that the world might want to read. And so he wants to get that out, and he wants to have that as basically his final word. And that's what he wants to do. Because he wasn't just, a guy who happened to be a professor. He was very good at it. And you'll see how his relationship, and it's been touched on at the beginning, with Kirsten Mead, and how that's something that the way her life turned out and her academic career turned out bothers him.
Yeah.
And it's something, what he wants to do before he's gone is set anything right that he can.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Wow.
not worried about self-pity or feeling sorry for himself or just sitting around and doing nothing. He's got a lot to do.
Wow. That is wonderful. I cannot wait. Thank you guys for watching. Again, Timothy Kabel, we cannot wait. We'll come back with more, digging more deep into this story. You guys, it's a nice plush story. And again, there it is there. And great writer. We look forward to more. You have an amazing night. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you same time next week.
No, I'm in 2 weeks. I'm on the 21st and the 28th.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I want to bring them back so quick. The 21st and the 28th would give us more to deep dive in there. and the 21st and the 28th.
Yeah.
28th. We will see you then, and we look forward to that. Have an amazing night.
You too. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Guys, having such a wonderful time with Timothy Kabel. I'm trying to
Oh,
bring him
bye.
back really quick. That X up there, you hit that X and it should take you off. And so, guys, thank you for being here. Wendy Arced and Barbara Von Miles. Thank you guys for being here. Again, Timothy Kabel here. And we do have our scout out shout out, but this is our 3-day show. He will be coming back on the 21st and the 28th. So we'll have those dates together. And thank you so much for being here. Good night to you all. I have kept you long enough. Again, I'm Ellen Sutter of ESP Presents and ESP Book Chats, while we bring page turners your way. If you are an author and would like for your story to be streaming from Zoom into Facebook, do email us at mrssuds@yahoo.com and just put in the subject heading, I'm ready to shine. You guys have an amazing night. Good night.